Hello, and in this video, you'll learn to create this awesome website with Next.js, Typescript, and Framer Motion. It features a video background, an embedded YouTube player, animation on transition, different animations with Framer Motion, animated numbers, expandable cards, also made with Framer Motion. And so yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so let's begin by going to our desktop and creating a new folder, which we'll call Next Animated. You can call whatever you like, just don't use any capital letters as that will break Next.js. Also, let's drag it into Visual Studio Code, go into full screen mode, go to View, enter Terminal, and input the command from Next.js. Let's go to the official Next.js website, copy the command, go back to our Visual Studio Code, paste it in, and add a / at the end. And in a few seconds, we should get all the options to set up our application. You might also get a notification to install the latest version of Next.js, and you should do that if you don't have the latest version. As you can see, I have the latest one, so I don't get that notification. Now, we would like to use TypeScript. Yes, yes, no, yes, no, and that's it. So basically just pressing enter a bunch of times. And as you can see, we automatically get this file and folder structure going. And we'll also install all of these dependencies in the meantime. And I'll be back when everything is installed. And so for me this took 2 minutes, for you it might be shorter or longer depending on your computer specs. And as you can see here we have the file and folder structure and most importantly our app. But for now let's test that everything is working by running npm run dev to run the application on our device. We should get this page.tsx default layout. And here in 5.5 seconds it is ready. We can control click onto our app and we should get the default Next.js app. And as you can see, it's here. Now we can go back, close the terminal for now, go to page.tsx and remove everything inside of the return statement. We don't need any of it. We can add our own main, say hello from webchain dev, just test it out, add a class name to test out Tailwind CSS, remove this image, and let's see what we get. As you can see, we have the text in red, but we still have these lines. This comes from globals.css. In here, we can remove everything but these 3 lines at the top. These allow us to use Tailwind CSS. And now if we go back, we have a blank screen with the text of hello from webchain dev. Exactly what we need. And so we can begin working on our home page. We can begin by giving this main a class name, which will be bg-black, w-screen, h-screen, and overflow-x-hidden. Next, we want to create some components. For this, we can go into the root of our directory, create a new folder, which we'll call components, and create a new file called hero.tsx, and run refc. As always, if you're unable to use this command, you can go to extensions and download this extension for a lot of snippets for React and React Native. So first thing we can do is remove this text and give a class name to this div, not children but a class name, relative, flex, items-center, justify-center, w-full, and h-full. Simply a wrapper div. Next, we can go into page.tsx and add this hero. We can remove this text and add the hero over here and press tab. If we go back to our app, we won't really see anything because we only add the changes that we'll see later on. We'll now need to add some videos to the hero section. But for this, we'll actually need to import them. You can go to the description down below and find all the assets, all the images and videos in the Google Drive folder. And now that we've added all the images and videos to our public folder, let's begin adding them. So first things first, let's add a video, which will have some attributes of autoplay, loop, and muted. It will also have a source, which will be a self-closing tag with a source of /gold.mp4, and the type of the video will be video/mp4. Also, let's add a class name, which will be absolute, w-full, and h-full, bottom 365 pixels, z-10, left-0, and object-cover. Next, we can copy this, add another one underneath, and change this class name. We can remove all of this, add a minus over here, so minus-bottom-365, and also left-0, a z of 1 instead of 10, object-cover, and a rotation of 180 degrees, so turning it upside down. And now let's see how this looks in the app itself, and as you can see, we have two identical videos, one longer than the other, and one is upside down. So we have the beginnings of our app ready. Now let's add this text in the middle of the hero section. For this we can go back to components, create a new file called hero content.tsx, and as before run refc. In here we can remove this text and style this wrapper div. We can give it a class name, z-20, flex-call, items-center, justify-center, h-full, w-full, and text-white. Also, we'll be using frame motion for this part, so we can go into our terminal, onto this plus, to be able to install dependencies and still have our terminal running. And in here say npm install framer-motion. Also, as we'll be using frame motion, let's make this a client component. So let's say use client at the top. We can now close the terminal and import some things from this library. So we can say import motion and animate presence, and this will come from framer-motion. Next, we can wrap everything in the animate presence and move it over here. And finally, add the text. This will be a motion.h1, which will have an initial of hidden, an animate of visible, and an exit of exit. Next, we can give this a class name, which will be text-60 pixels on medium devices and higher, text-86 pixels, z-30, font-bold, margin bottom-16, text-transparent, bg-clip-text, bg-gradient, -2-R, and from-yellow-500. Now, this H1 isn't finished. We need two more things. We need some variants, and we need an extra class name, an extra class from CSS. And now let's add both of them. For this, we can go into the root of our directory, create a new folder called motion, and create a new file inside this folder called motion.ts. You can find the entire file in the description down below. And so for now we can paste these two variants, which is slide in from top and slide in from bottom, which we'll need for the text in the hero content. And so we can come back there, go to variants, add the slide in from top, which will come from motion and emotion. Let's add the metamorphosis text, metamorphosis. Let's add a class of yellow dash shadow, which we'll add in a second. Also, let's copy this h1, add it one more time, and change this to slide in from bottom. Now let's go to globals.css and add the class. And here's the class itself. You can find it in the description down below or simply copy down from here. Now let's go back to hero content and change this position slightly. I'll show you what I mean in a second. We can go to hero, add hero content, and if we go back and reload this page, we will get this. So as you can see, this huge gap, which we don't need. This is quite easy to fix. We can go back to hero content and change the position for this. We can make it absolute and say bottom dash 300 pixels on medium devices and higher, bottom of 265 pixels. And remove this margin bottom of 16 as we don't need it. Now, if we go back and reload it, we will get this. As you can see, quite nice animation and quite some nice text. Now, let's move on and add the navbar. For that, we can go into components and create a new file called navbar.tsx. And in here run refc, as usual. Also, we can go to layout.tsx and change some things over here. First of all, go above this body and add the navbar. Next, we can also change the title and description. This could be company portfolio page and rate the next generation of web apps with us. So basically just write whatever you want over here. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter for SEO, but in this case, as we're simply making a test project, it doesn't matter. If you're going to actually publish it somewhere and use it as your personal or company portfolio, you should obviously think what you have as a title or description. Now let's go back to the navbar and start styling this div. Let's remove this text and add a class name over here. This will be w-full h-100 pixels on medium devices and higher, a height of 65 pixels. It will be fixed on the top, so top-0, shadow-lg, bg-transparent, a z of 50, a padding x of 4, and a medium devices and higher padding x of 10. And let's close this bracket. Also, just remembered, I did get a request from a viewer to make the fonts bigger to be able to see everything better, so I'll do just that. Now we can continue by adding another div. This div will have a class name, which will be w-full, h-full, flex, items-center, justify-center, a medium devices and higher justify-between, and m-auto. In here we can add a link, which will come from next/link, which will say in my case, webchain dev. Every link must have href, meaning where this link will go. In my case, it will be the home page, so just slash. Also, this link will have a class name, which will be text-2xl, font-bold, margin left-4, on medium device and higher, margin left of 10. Or actually, we could just remove this and make it margin left-10 altogether. Hidden on medium device and higher, show. Text-transparent, bg-clip-text, bg-gradient-2-r, from -hash ffd700 to -black. Let's keep it like this for now. Under this, we'll add an animate presence, which we'll get from frame motion, which we'll use later on for our transition. For now, we'll simply say mode wait. Now let's continue and add another div in here. This div will have a class name of w-full md w-500 pixels h-full flex-call on medium devices and higher flex-row items-center justify-between medium device and higher margin right-14 and a margin top of 2. In here we can add another div which will also have a class name of flex items-center justify-between w-full h-auto text-lg. Let's fix this auto, by the way. Margin right-4 on medium device and higher, margin right-15, padding x-5 on medium device and higher, padding x-20, rounded-full, and text-hash ffd700, the same gold color we used over here. Next, in here we can add a link. This link will have an href to /about-me, a page which we haven't created yet, and this will say about me. Next, we can add an image which will come from next/image. This image will have a source which will be /logo.png and alt of logo. Next, a width of 76 and a height of also 76. It should also have a class name of cursor-pointer. Under here we can add another link. We can actually just copy this one to make it easier. And also the class name to this one of cursor-pointer. Now copy it, add it over here, change this to my-projects, and say my projects over here. And we can also make this capital. Next thing we can do is add some socials. So we can go under animate presence, create a new div, which will give a class name of hidden on medium devices and higher flex-row, and a gap of 5. For the next part, we'll need some constants, and so we can go to the root of our directory, create a new folder called constants, create a new file called index.ts, and paste some constants inside of here. Simply some basic data to make our life easier. And so in here we can say socials.map, don't forget to import the socials, social, and return an image. The image will have a source of social.name and alt of social.name, and this should be social.source.name and a key of social.name. Finally, you can have a width of 24 and a height of 24. And I believe if there are no errors, we should be done with the navbar itself. Now let's go back and see what we get. And we get an error. I see the problem is because we're using animate presence and that uses hooks. To fix it, we can go above here and add a use client to make this a client component. Now if we reload it, we get this navbar, which should be correct. We might change this color in the future as I'm not the biggest fan of it right now, but otherwise everything is working correctly. Now let's move on to the transition and to the adding of some new pages. So to have a transition, we actually need some pages. For this, we can go into app and use Next.js's built-in folder routing system. We can create a new folder called about-me. In here, we can create a page.tsx, run our EFC, and rename this to page with a capital letter. Next, we can create another file or other folder in app and call it my-projects. In here, create a page.tsx. Simply copy this for now, paste it in here, change this to projects, and change this to about me, so we can differentiate them. Now if we go back, reload this, click about me, we should be sent to the about me page. As you can see, this says about me. And if we click on my projects, it does it correctly too. Now let's add the transition between these pages. For this, we can go into components and create a new file called transition.tsx. And in here run refc. We'll make it a client component straight away, as we'll be using frame emotion, so use client. And we can import motion from framer-motion. Next, outside of the transition, we can create some variants. So we can say const transition variance equals initial scale of 1. Next, say animate scale of 5. Let's say comma over here. And finally, exit scale of 0. Now we can go to the transition itself, remove this text, give a class name to this div, or first of all make it a motion.div, and only then give it a class name. And the class name will be top-0, bottom-0, right-full. Something's wrong with my typing today. W-520 pixels, H-520 pixels, Z-30, BG-CC-A-C00, and rounded-full. This can be a self-closing div. Next, we can give it some variants of transition variance and initial not inherit of initial, and animate of animate, and exit of exit, and finally a transition of delay 0.2, duration of 0.6, and ease of ease in out. And I believe we're done with the transition component itself. Now let's connect it to the routing and the navbar. So we can go back to the navbar, go to the return statement and say use state snippet. This is going to be is routing. And by default, it's going to equal to false. Also, let's import use state from React. Next, we can say use state snippet. Once again, this is going to be prev path. By default, it's going to equal to / meaning home page. Let's make this capital and this capital as well. Next, we can say const path equals use path name. This is simply going to tell us what page we're currently on. And then here, let's add a use effect. It's going to be if prev path does not equal to path. In that case, set is routing to true. And it's going to depend on path and prev path. Next, we can add another use effect. So use effect. If is routing, in that case, set prev path to path. Next, set const timeout equals set timeout. Set is routing to false. That's going to happen after 1200 milliseconds. And we can go outside of here, but still inside the yellow bracket, and say return clear timeout and select the timeout. And if there aren't any errors, I believe we're done with the functionality for the adding the transition to the routing. One final bit is we have to say is routing over here. Now what we can do is go back here into the animate presence and say is routing, and in that case we're going to have a transition. For some reason it isn't finding it, and yes, this transition from /transition. And now we should truly be done. Let's see how it looks in the actual app. Now let's reload this and click on one of the links, and we'll get this transition, which is almost what we want. To fix it, we can go back over here to the transition and say key equals unique key. Looks strange, but this should actually fix it. And also I did notice that the navbar is a bit off over here, so we can go back over here and say margin right -10 over here to center everything. Now let's remove this and let's see how the transition works now. And as you can see, now it comes back around. So it opens and closes, making it look much better. While we're working here in our local device, it lags a bit and we actually see the front page before the transition happens. However, once we deploy it, lag should stop, as Next.js is much faster when it's on hosting on Vercel rather than when it's on localhost. And now let's continue finishing up the front page of our application. We'll begin by creating a skills section. For this, we can go into components and create a new file called skills.tsx and run refc. We can remove the text, add a class name to the wrapper div, say absolute -dash bottom dash 125 pixels, z-20, w-90%, a height of 250 pixels, margin bottom -10, on medium device and higher, margin bottom -0. We can go inside and create another div, which can have a class name of flex-call, gap-5, items-center, justify-center, padding-4, and padding top-5. Next, we can create an h1, which will say my skills, and we'll have a class name of, this will be text-4 Excel, and let's give this text a color, so text-hash FFD700, our usual gold color. Under here we can have another div, which will be class name, grid, on medium devices flex, grid-calls-2, on medium devices flex-row, a gap of 4, on medium device and higher, a gap of 12. And in here we can say skill underscore data, which will come from constants, dot map skill, and return an image, which will come from next/image. This image will have a source of skill.image, an alt of skill.skillName, a key of skill.skillName, a width of skill.skillWidth. There should be, but I believe there isn't. So let's just make it 65. And a height of 65. Now let's go to hero, and under hero content add skills, which will come from /skills. And now I believe we're done with this part. Let's see how it looks. And now let's reload this. And as you can see, this does look quite good, but a little too small. So we can come back, change this to maybe 75, or even maybe 80. Yeah, let's do 80. And if we come back and reload it once again, This is much bigger and looks much better. Now we can move on to the About section, which will feature a YouTube embedded video. For this, we can go back, go into Components, and create a new file called about.tsx, and run refc. We can remove this text and add a class name to this wrapper div. The class name will be relative flex items-center justify-center h-full and w-screen. And here we can have a video, which will have some attributes of autoplay, not auto capacity but autoplay, muted, loop, and a class name which will be absolute, h-full, w-full, bottom-0, left-0, z-1, object-cover, and rotate-180. This should be a normal tag instead of a self-closing one, and it should have a source, with the source being the same one that we had for the main screen. So we can say source/gold.mp4, and the type of the video will be video/mp4. Now we'll also need another component for the text and the video, the actual embedded YouTube video. And so for this, we can go into Components, create a new file called vid content.tsx, and run refc. We can remove this text, add a class name to the wrapper div, and the class name will be w-90%, p-10, z-20, flex, and items-center. Inside of here, we can have another div, which will also have a class name, and that will be w-full, flex, flex-call, on medium devices and higher, flex-row, gap-20, modern top-24, and items-center. By the way, in this case, it was necessary to separate our components. For example, we could have easily put all of this under the video and everything would have been fine. In this case, it's fine because we won't be using any hooks in this component. I simply made it to look better. But in other cases, for example, if we would have not used any hooks or frame motion this component, but would have used hooks or frame motion this one, we would have had to separate them to make Next.js handle it better, so that as much code as possible will be handled on the server and not on the client. So we can continue by adding the text. So we can say div, give this div a class name of flex, flex-call, and gap-6, and a margin bottom of 6. In here we can h1, which will say my channel, and it can have a class name of text-6xl and text-ffd700, so our usual gold color. And then here add a p tag with some random text, it's simply Latin, and give this p tag a class name, which will be text-lg, max-w-600 pixels, and text-gray-400. And under this, we'll be adding the embedded YouTube video. To embed the YouTube video, you'll first need to find it. In this case, I'll use some random video from my channel. And I'll click Share, Embed, and copy all of this. And so I can go back to Visual Studio Code, go under this div, and paste it over here. This isn't exactly finished. We'll change this to 590 and change this to 350. Next, we'll also give this a class name of rounded-lg, w-450 pixels, on medium devices and higher, a W of 590 pixels, and a margin right of 6. Now I do believe we should be done with this. There might be some issues with the full screen. That did happen to me a few times, and if so, we'll fix them, but if not, this should be done. And so we can go ahead and piece everything together by going to About under the video and adding the video or other vid content. Next, we can go into page.tsx, which I believe is over here. And for some reason didn't import it, so let's import it once again. Let's go to page.tsx, it's over here, and add About over here. Now let's see how this looks in the actual page. So let's reload this. And here it is. Looks great. As you can see, we have this text, title, and YouTube video.
Hello, and in this video...
But we are having some issues with the full screen. It might just take some time to fix it. That does happen. Just in case, what we'll do is say allow full screen over here as well. Usually it simply takes time. And so, I believe we are actually fully done with the front page. Now we can move on to the My Projects page. By the way, I know it took me quite a long time to finish this video because of holidays and whatnot, but I do remember I did get a request to add an embedded video into my project, which is why I added this. As you can see, it's quite simple. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video so far, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you. And so we can begin by going to my-projects and page.tsx, removing this text and giving this wrapper div a class name. This will be bg-center, bg-cover, w-screen, h-screen, flex, items-center, and justify-center. Next, we can give this div an image background, or rather the entire page, an image background, which will be style, background, image, URL, snow, or rather slash snow moon dot jpg. And now let's check out how this looks. Go to my-projects, and as you can see, this looks great. Now we can go back in here and create a new component called open cards .tsx. As always, run refc. We can remove this, style the wrapper div, which will be class name bg-transparent, w-full, h-full, flex-call, gap-4, and items-center. Next, we can create another div. It's lagging a little today, and give this div a class name. max-w-7xl, margin x of auto, a padding x of 4, and the text of center. Next, we can say h1, say featured projects, give this h1 a class name of text-3xl, font-extra bold, and text-white. Or rather, I don't think white will be the best for this specific background, so we can say hash ffd700, the usual golden color. And over here we can add a p tag, which can say check out our latest creations. And this can also have a class name of a text-xl, text-gray-400. Under this div, we can create yet another div, which will also have a class name of flex-call, moving device in higher flex-row, justify-center, items-center, and a gap of 5. And here we can say projects, which will come from constants, dot map, project, and index, and make the return. For some reason it didn't import, so let's do this again. Remove this 9 wherever it came from. And in here add a motion.div. But to add motion.div, we need to import motion itself. So we can say import motion from framer-motion. This motion.div will have several attributes. First of all, a key, which will be project.name. Also a class name, which will be quite interesting. This will be a dynamic class name with cursor dash pointer h dash 500 pixels bg dash cover bg dash center rounded dash 20 pixels. This is the normal part. Now let's add some customization. For this, we can go in here and say use state snippet, and this will be expanded index. Let's import use state from React, and by default it's going to be null, because by default none of the cards are going to be expanded. Oh, and we are getting an error over here, but that's simply because I forgot to put a bracket. If we do that, everything is going to be fixed. Now, let's add a new function to make the functionality for clicking on the cards and expanding them. So we can say const handle card click equals index any, and we can say set expanded index. Now you might think that we simply put index over here, and if we simply want to add a functionality to expand the cards, then that would be correct. But what we want to do is that if the person clicks on an opened card, we want that card to close. And for this we can say if index equals expanded index, in that case -1 else index. So basically what we're doing is if the card is open, we want to close it. Set it to a non-existent card number. Next we can add the variants. So basically the states for an open and closed card. This will be const card variance equals expanded 640 pixels, and this should be a little different, like this, width and 640 pixels. Made a mistake over there. And collapsed width 200 pixels. 200 pixels, like this. And we have a choice. We could either put in a class name or put it as variance. I think we should put it as variance. So let's do that. We can say variance equals card variance. Next, animate. This is going to be if index is not equal to expanded index, in that case collapsed else expanded. Next we can say transition duration 0.5. Next, on click, this will be this kind of function, and handle card click with the index as the parameter. And finally we can style it and say background image is going to be URL, and actually we should have a different type of this, so we can say URL project dot source. And I believe we're done with this div. Now we can go inside of it. Inside, we'll still have some things. We can create another div, which can have a class name of h-full, flex-call, justify-end. Next, we can have another div. This div will have a class name of rounded-b-20 pixels, so only rounding at the bottom, bg-gray-800, bg-opacity-75, min-h-100 pixels, flex-call, items-center, and justify-center. This is the part at the bottom of the card where the text is stored. And inside of here, we can h2. h2 better than h1, although it doesn't really matter. And we can say text-xl, font-semi-bold, text-white, text-center. And this can say, in this case, it's simply card and index +1. Although we could put a title to it. And under here we can say index equals expanded index. In that case, we can have a p tag with a class name of margin top-2 text-gray-300 text-center. And this can be project.description. But I do believe we should change this to project.name, go back to page.tsx, and add open cards over here. I am getting some lag, which is a little annoying, but it does happen. Let's import it. Also, let's add a div, which will surround open cards. This div will have a class name of margin top-8. And let's see if there are any errors. Let's reload it. Here it is. And as you can see, we are getting some weird error, where the clicking does work, but the card isn't expanding. Let's look at where the error is. It's most likely not here. Oh, and yes, here it is. I accidentally put a bracket over here. If we remove this and reload, now this should work. When we click it, it should show us more of our image and also expand this text, which is great. Now this seems very small and this seems unreadable, so we can go back. Let's see what the error is over here. Once again, a typo. And let's make this gray-200 instead. And now, I do believe this part of the project is done, and we only have one final page left, and that is About Me. Let's start creating it now. And so, we can begin by going to the About Me folder, going to page.tsx, removing the text, and adding class name to the wrapper div. This can be bg-black, flex, items-center, justify-center, w-screen, h-screen, overflow, -x-hidden, and relative. Next, we can create a new component called aboutme.tsx and run refc. Straight away, we can make it a client component, as we'll be using frame and motion a lot here. So we can say use client and import motion from frame and motion. So motion from framer-motion. Next, we're going to remove this div and make this a motion.div. Give this div, first of all, a class name And this class name will be flex-call gap-6 padding top-10 absolute left-72 max-w-400 pixels. Next, under here we can say transition duration of 2. Currently we don't have animation for a transition, but we'll add it once we actually have some text inside of here. First of all, we can h1, which can say about me, and can have a class name of text-6xl, text-hash ffd700, and that's it. Under here we can have a p tag, which can say some random Latin text, and we can take this random Latin text from about and the vid content. We can simply copy this, go back to about me, and paste it in here. We can give this p tag a class name, which will be text-gray-200 text-18 pixels and max-w-500 pixels. And finally, under here we can add a button, which will control most of the movement for this component, which can say learn more, and we'll have a class name of bg-hash ffd700 p-4 rounded-xl and text-white. Now we can actually add some animations to this motion.div. For this, we can go up here, say use state snippet, and say is clicked. This will be useful later on in the project. And by default, it's going to be false. Next, we can say const text controls equals use animation, which will come from framer motion. And under here, we can have a handle click. So const handle click equals basic arrow function set is clicked to true. Once again, this will be useful later on. And text controls dot start x to -190%. And so we can go back to this motion.div, say animate, and add the text controls. Now let's see what we get. But first, to get an actual animation, we do need to add a handle click, or rather an on click, to this button. So we can say on click, handle click. And now we can actually see what we get. Let's control click back into our localhost. Once again, we see our app. Let's go to about me. We get some internal server error. Usually we simply have to reload the page if this happens. It is Next.js, it is sometimes unstable. Let's run the terminal once again. Oftentimes you'll get some random errors with Next.js. You'll try to fix it, nothing's happening, you can't fix it. Oftentimes it's simply that you have to reload it. Or in this case, that we forgot to import useState. That might be part of it. Although useState does not cause internal server errors, it causes normal ones. And so if we go to about me, as you can see, no internal server error, and we get a blank screen, which is most likely because we didn't add about me to the actual page. So let's do just that. Say about me, go back here, and we get this text, which is correct. Let's click learn more, and it moves over here. Although I do believe this isn't exactly where we want it to be initially, and where we want it to move. And the reason being that we said left, not left. Now this should be correct, and as you can see, when we click it, it smoothly moves away from the screen, which is exactly what we want. Now let's add all the other elements. Now the next element will be an image. As we'll have three elements that will move and exist separately from each other, what we could do is simply surround the entire component in React fragments to follow the rules of React. And so under here we can have the motion dot image. It can have a source of slash coder, an alt of coder, a width of 476, a height of 476, and a class name of absolute, and right-72. Now to the part with animation. We'll do the exact same thing that we added with text controls. So we can say const image controls equals use animation. And in here we can actually copy this. That will simply be faster. But instead of text controls, it will say image controls. And here we will not only control the X, but also the scale. So we can say scale 1.4, and the X will be 30%. Not 40, but 30. And now we can the final element. So once again, we can go under this motion.image, and add another motion.div. This motion.div will have a slightly longer class name of class name relative bg-gray-800 w-600 pixels padding-10 rounded-lg shadow-md and absolute. Oh, and I just noticed I did make a mistake. This should be /coder.png to make it an actual image. And this should also have an initial position, which will be x of 100 view width. So basically, exactly outside of our screen initially. And now, let's go back to the app and let's see what we have. Let's reload this. As you can see, we have this cool section. Oftentimes this will be enough, but when we click, this moves away, and this, for some reason, doesn't, probably because we haven't connected properly. And yes, we haven't indeed connected it properly. For this, we can say animate equals image controls. And now if we reload this and click this button, it moves over here a little too quickly for my liking. It should be slower, but we'll handle this issue later on. And moving back to this motion.div, we can go inside of it and create a new div, which can have a class name of grid-calls-2 and a gap of 5. This will house our grid with animated numbers. Inside of here, we can have a new div with a class name of flex-call, and a gap of 2. This is the place where we'll be using isClicked and setIsClicked, but for this we'll need a new component, which we'll create right now, called animated numbers.tsx. We can run refc. This component will have props, which will be target, and as this is TypeScript, we'll need to give target a type. So target will be of a type of number, just like this, so quite simple. And we can move straight outside of the return statement. We can say use state snippet, current, so the current number, and let's make this capital, import use state. By default, it's going to equal to 0. And as we're using use state, let's make this a client component straight away by saying use client. Next, under here we can have a use effect. Let increment equals 0. Set timeout. And this will be const interval ID. equals set interval. By the way, this might seem quite complex, but usually these days these kind of functions are generated with ChatGPT, so don't worry if you don't understand something. And here we can say increment plus equals math.cl target minus current divided by 100. Now this number can change. 100 simply means that every time this function runs, we'll be incrementing by 1/100th of the target, meaning 1%. You can change it to any number. And over here we can say 20, and this 20 will mean the speed at which we move. The less this number, the faster everything finishes. I found 20 to be a good number because it's fast enough for the person to see the animation, but not to bore him. But moving on, we'll still be inside of here, and we can say set current to increment, and if increment is bigger than target, I'm not typing fast today, in that case, clear interval of interval ID. So basically what we're doing is we're running this function over and over again, and once we reach our target, we stop. That's essentially all we're doing. And we can go outside this 20, say return clear interval ID. And if we go over here, we can say 0 in this case, or maybe we could add a slight delay of 50. So basically in here you can add a delay of when the actual animation will start. Because initially when we click the button, this component will be outside of the field of view of the user. So part of the animation will happen without the user seeing it. So if you want, you can actually add a slight delay over here. This is quite small, only 50 milliseconds, so barely visible, but might look better on the screen. And also we can go back to the use effect, and say everything will depend on target. And in here, you can actually remove all of this and say return a simple div, which can have a class name of font-bold text dash, I believe this should be 6XL, and the text will be of our usual golden color. So text dash hash ff d700. Inside of this div, we'll simply house the current. And we're done with this animated numbers component. We can go back to about me and say if is clicked. In that case, we'll show animated number, which will come from our components. And so again, the targets, which can be 10,000. Under here, add a p tag, lines of code written. This can have a class name of text-gray-300, text-lg, font-semi-bold. Next, we can copy this div. Let's remove this. Copy the div, add this 3 more times, make this 1000, hours of work, 250, clients satisfied, 25, new employees. Simply some random statistics, new employees. Next, we can add an animation for everything. So we can do the same thing we did before. Say const slide text controls. equals use animation, slide text controls dot start, scale of 1.2, and x of minus 60%. Now we can go back, add the animate, and add the slide text controls. Next, we want to have a button to be able to reverse everything back. For this, we can go above here, add a new button. This button can have a class name of absolute. So absolute inside of this motion.div, right-6, style, top 40%. When we want to style position with percentages, it's best to use classic CSS rather than Tailwind. Unfortunately, that is the case. Next, we can say text-white, adding -4, and I believe that is it for the styling for the button. And this can say back to info. This button will need a function, which will be const handle back click equals, once again, a basic arrow function. And this will be const timeout equals set timeout. Set is clicked to false after 1350 milliseconds. So basically, we don't want the number to disappear straight away after the changes are reverted, because the animation will still be going on. Next, we can say image controls dot start, scale of 1, and an x of 0%. Next, text controls dot start, an x of 0%. And finally, slide text controls dot start with a scale of 1, an x of 190%. Now we can go down here, add an on click to this button, and say handle back click. And if there are no errors, and if I didn't forget anything, we should be done with this component. And now let's look at this page and click learn more. As you can see, the things move to the correct position, but a little too fast. For this, we can go back here, go to the motion.image, say transition, duration of 2. Next, we can copy this, go back to this motion.div, and do the same thing. This should slow everything down. Let's click on it. And for some reason, this did fix it, but this isn't fixed, which is quite strange. Oh yes, simply some lag. And also, let's make this look better by going here, saying and LT like this. Let's learn more, and this button will look like this, slightly better. Oh, and as you can see, we have this arrow. When we click, it moves back. When we click here, it moves here again with the numbers animating. And so, I believe we're fully done with this website. We obviously have this page with this cool animation of some info and some statistics. We also have this page, which showcases the latest projects of my YouTube channel with these expandable cards. And also, we have this front page with the video background, some animation on this text, showcasing some of the skills, and an integrated embedded YouTube video. And so, the final thing we need to do is upload this thing to GitHub and to Vercel to deploy it to a hosting. Let's begin. For this, we can go to GitHub Log in if you aren't already. Next, click on this plus sign, create a new repository. We call it Next-animated, and create a repository. We'll have a set of commands, some of which we can copy. Go down here, open our terminal, stop it from running, clear it, say get init, get add dot, next get commit -m first commit, next get branch m main, get remote add origin, and finally let's push everything to this GitHub repository. This might take some time as we have a video background which might wait a lot, and it might take some time to upload to GitHub, but we should be fine. As you can see, we did get a warning that the file is a bit too large, but not critically large. We can't have any files above 100 megabytes. Everything below it is still fine and acceptable. And so we can go back here, go to Vercel, add new project, log into your GitHub if you haven't already, choose this repository, let's just call it like this, and click deploy. And for the first time in any of my projects, the deployment failed. So let's click to see what happened. As you can see, here is the error, and it happened in the vid content component, as you can see. So we can go back and fix it. Let's go to vid content. As you can see, here is the error. Let's see what the fix can be. Change the spelling. A new error. Oh, let's change the spelling as well. If that's the problem. Yes, it is. Now there shouldn't be any more errors, although there could be. And so we can actually go to source control over here. Say fix vid content and click commit. Yes. Sync changes. Let's see if this in fact has changed. Let's reload this. As you can see, we did get this fix vid content commit. So this should be correct. And now let's reload this. Once again, say next animated. And once again, click deploy for the second time. Well, that's annoying. See my dash next dash animated like this. And now actually click deploy. And let's wait for this to finish and see if there are any more errors or if we'll actually be able to finish our website. And here it is, finally deployed. We can now click visit. And here is the website. So yeah, here we have the front page. This works. And now the full screen also works. Next, let's see if the transition is fast. And yes, it does work better than in our actual project in localhost. All of these work correctly and smoothly. Let's check this animation, learn more. This moves perfectly. And this moves back correctly as well. So yeah, we're fully done with our project. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.